Hey, what's up everybody? I'm here today to do a little tutorial for how I do editing and an introduction to my most prominent editor program called VSDC Video Editor. Now, this program is not one of the big video editing programs, and often people get confused whenever I say VSDC Video Editor. And that comes as there's not that many tutorials online about this program and what it can actually do. A lot of them are very simple for very casual editing purposes. However, you can get pretty deep with this program in certain ways, and it can almost be better than some of the other programs like PowerDirector and DaVinci. In some regards, it is not perfect in any regard, but I prominently use it for the reasons I'm going to show you. All right, so now we'll go here, and I don't know if you guys can hear that, but there is a thunderstorm outside. We'll go to the top left, and you'll create a new project. You'll see here for your frame rate and your resolution. And none of this, I mean, you can set your width and your height. Usually you want to do it to your computer or to the 1080. It has presets over here if you want to go 2K, 8K. I wouldn't do that. I would just go for a 1080p 16:9 regular. I usually do 30 FPS, but you can go higher if you really want to do that. You can set your background. As you can see, this is a black background. You can change that to whatever color you desire. But for now, I'm going to keep it to be black. And I believe we also have opacity settings, so you can make the background transparent if you want. But for now, we're going to keep it black. So I'm going to create a new project. And the first thing you're going to want to do is find out what's so good about VSDC. Why do I use it all the time, and how am I able to edit so well? Well, not everything I've made has been completely in VSDC, but it has been the base of everything I've done. So first we're going to put in a photo. Let's do a little test with this goofy photo. You can grab it, you can scale it down, you can move it around. So this is pretty basic. One thing about VSDC that is good is the timeline. If you go in the corner, you can expand these tabs. With this, you've got a timeline for everything. You've got a timeline. This does not just include images or videos. This also includes audio. So audio is able to be layered onto a timeline. So what you can do, this is the unique part about VSDC and why I enjoy VSDC. If you're in here in your Projects Explorer, Objects Explorer, you can basically find all of your objects. You can search through separate projects. So here's the first project that we were on. Now I'm on the new project. Very easy to swap. However, there's a third one called templates over here. We'll go to templates, and you'll see I already have a bunch of stuff open. Let me close that. So when you're first opening this program, you'll see these three main ones: video effects, audio effects, and text effects. Text effects I don't use as often, but video and audio effects are going to be your prominent effects. So the main thing you want to do with editing is doing effects on videos and audio. So here's something very interesting about VSDC. I can double click on the image in this bottom left corner on this timeline. It's at the top. I double click and I'm into a new bar. As you can see, this is scene 0, and now we're inside of the image. So what does this mean? Well, in here, you're allowed to throw in the effects that you desire. Now, you're wondering, with other programs, it's usually you put an effect inside and you can edit inside, but this one instead has a timelined effect. So what that means is that, as you can see, we have a perspective. We can throw a perspective in here, so we can change our perspective. Now, for the duration of this clip, let me mute the audio. Actually, audio is already muted. So for the duration, you can tell we've applied the effect. So it's going to last for some time. However, we can shorten our effect. So we can enable it after a second, around a second. So if I play, it will go away after that time. So that's actually quite unique to this program other than Premiere Pro. This is essentially cheaper video effects than Premiere Pro, but I'm not into Premiere Pro and I do not have the program. However, if you do want to use this program, it is available. It is not a free program, but it is cheaper and it's a one-time purchase program. So with this, you can timeline effects. Not to mention, you can also stack effects. So ones that are on top of the timeline, it uses a layering system as to where the top effect takes priority over the bottom effect. So what can happen here is that you can stack effects in this way to where you have priority. Not only can you apply effects, so I'm going to add the effect, but we're going to add a new image. You can add an image to an image, and as you can see, the image is on the program. So let's shrink the image, and the image is only available within its bounds. So you can put images within layers of other images. So I've just added an image to this image. And as you can see, the bounds are only available within the resolution of the layer that you're in. However, as you can see, with the layering feature, effects that are above the image layer or even another effects layer will also be affected. So these are both affected. However, if I put the effect below the image, it is now not affected. And it is still within that resolution. So this is where you can get a little technical. This is more of your introductory things with VSDC because this is the main point of VSDC. You're allowed to go into other programs and put stuff together, essentially. Doing it all in program is quite difficult. You're going to want to bring together multiple effects together to get anywhere. Now, let's remove that second image. Let's take our image, and if you can't see any of these tabs, these property windows, basic effects, all these other things that you see around this, you will go into view and you will click these to open them. So what you want to do is we'll take our effect. You can even go inside of the effect to affect the effect. So the effect has its own layering system. So damn, you could even crop the effect. So imagine this. This is how advanced this can get. And honestly, it is not that hard to learn. So look, I can crop that, but as you can see, there isn't any protocol for that to occur. If you wanted to crop that, I assume, let's see if we can actually do anything. Cropping and resize. I don't think that one is too good of an example. However, I suppose we could just put more effects in there. I don't know how. I don't believe this program does that well with layering effects within effects. However, we'll move on to the part where you're allowed to mess with these effects in their own way. So, okay. VSDC is not one of the best programs you can use. However, it is a program that I use, and you've seen the many projects that I've come out, and almost every single one of those has been in VSDC Video Editor. And there's a good amount of them that were made prominently in Blender. I have definitely made some that were made entirely within Blender or entirely within DaVinci. But with DaVinci, you have the issue of there not being any form of timelining and having to have a lot of editing programs suffer from just throwing on transitions. This one also has transitions. However, what you do to do this is that you just throw it in. It says paper burn from left. And if we play this, it will simply come into frame. This is because of the use of Beziers. Now, if you don't know what a Bezier is, it is a word not common upon people who are not adjusted to editing programs. Is we've got, if you click on this top right area in your properties window, and we're going to an effect here with the perspective. It's at 30 degrees. Okay, so we're at 30 degrees. Now, if you click on these three dots, it will open up this tab where you can edit your curves. Now, what's a curve? So with curves, you're allowed to basically, throughout the timeline, this is also a timeline. However, this will affect the scale and what number this is. So as you can see, we can increase and decrease from here, but also from here, we can increase and decrease, and you can see it moving. However, it is not just a straight line. You have to go up to this point where you can change your perimeter values. Click on this down arrow to see your options. Now we have constant and linear and all these other options. We're going to start with linear. So from point A to point B. So the start of this effect, we can set it, and you'll see on this timeline, we can shrink it. So now it is -33, but towards the end, it is around 14 degrees. So if we play our effect in our timeline, you can see that we can move our effect. And you can get into, that is just the simple part of using Bezier curves. However, there's a lot more options, such as this one is the second most simple, is where you can double click the line to add another dot so you can have more points. So if we play this, there's more points. Here, you can also extend it and the effects will stay. And as you can see, the effects stretch out. They don't create more onto the right. They stretch out. So this is actually an effect with every numerical value. And what I mean by numerical value is that if I were to get rid of this effect, let's add in a different effect, something more common, because you aren't really going to be using perspective. Let's use say we're going to use, I think it's still in here, shifting. Shifting is a very common one, and I couldn't tell you why this effect does this, but it starts out by already moving your effect. So I like to always set this to 0. I don't understand why it does this. It shouldn't do it. It's honestly inconvenient. And also, a good tip with using shift is to, if you don't want clipping, this is always set to use clipping. Set it without clipping. So if I had clipping on, watch what would happen. It would cut it. So just to tell the thing that you don't want to clip it, say without clipping. So then you could do this. So it could just move around. Otherwise, this is what you're going to be prominently using in this program. And there are a lot of other things, and I will do other tutorials for stuff such as masking. Masking is very useful in this program. But with Bezier curves, you're going to be prominently using this. This is your first step to using this program, is Bezier curves and applying effects on layers. And as you can see, if I were to add another image, you can see that how the layering system works here. And even with audio, I'm going to reduce its decibels, so actually, no, I don't have it on. So this is clearly not a, advanced here. This is probably the most introductory I can get with the VSDC video editor. I wouldn't suggest purely using this program. It can only get so advanced. Some things that it cannot do is properly do Beziers with audio. So basically, if I were to take this audio, and we're going to use the pitch effect, which is an audio effect. So we'll pull up pitch. It's called pitch shift. The thing with audio effects is if I click on those three buttons again, you can see that if we go into semitones, you can see that the perimeter value setting is grayed out. That means you actually can't ease in or ease out to your free will with audio effects. So I would not suggest using this program for any form of audio editing if you want to be clean. However, with video editing and overall exportation of projects, I would say this is a really good program if you want to organize how you see effects coming in and out and transitioning in and out. It's extremely good. I will pull up a project that I have created. Let's see if I have a project. So if you guys remember this one, I'm gonna turn off that back audio. I don't know if there's any audio in this one, but you can see how this program may be good for different things. You can see how you're able to, okay, let's just go into here. So we've got this little guy over here. If I go here, we have a zoom effect. This zoom effect is causing him to bounce, as you can see. This is more advanced, though, if you really want to get into this. So, and this is more of a puppet rig. As you can see, I can move his arm. That's a separate picture. And the head is completely separate. So we're using, this whole thing is, that's just the, hold on. Yeah. So basically what you want to do is layer properly. And look, even within the layer of the arm, I've caused that to move too. So it has a rotation effect. You can see it rotating. So this is how in-depth you can get with this program. I believe this project I made that got pretty popular on TikTok and on YouTube amassed, this was entirely made in VSDC. So this is the type of stuff you can actually pull off with this program. And this isn't even the most complex you can get with the program. You can get a lot deeper. This is actually pretty base level editing right here. So if you're interested in the program, you do have to pay for it. It's around $30. If that puts you off, you have to at least watch what I'm talking about, because I would say this editor is really good and really, people call it complicated. I would call it pretty beginner friendly. But you're just going to have to practice with it, as there is not that many regular tutorial videos on this program. So if you do enjoy this tutorial video on an introduction to VSDC effects, then I would suggest giving this video a like and also subscribe to the channel, because I'm still going to be releasing stuff through VSDC. So you'll see how I use this program and how you may be able to use it one day if you're interested. So thank you for watching.